Button up. Forward. 2 o'clock. Reverse. Load sailboat. Well done. Breaker. Right. That's one less.
Now, what you just heard there is some of the voice lines of the tank commander of the American forces in War Thunder. And the guy who actually voiced these lines for Gaijin is a guy called Brian Watts. Now, I had the opportunity and pleasure to sit down with Brian Watts and actually chat to him about voice acting, working with Gaijin, and also all of the other stuff that he has done. He is an incredible person to talk to when it comes to voice acting and also the industry around it. I really enjoyed this chat, and here you have it basically in full. And what I'll also say is Brian does have a bunch of social media stuff if you want to hit him up. He has a YouTube, he has a stream, and also he has a website. I'll put it all in the links in the description. I would highly recommend his website because it shows you all of the games that he's worked on and also some of the opportunities that he gives others to learn from him and also many more. The simple fact is, when you are dealing with a professional, it is always fantastic to sit down and learn from them. And I think that's exactly what we can all do today, listening to Brian.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So I'm Brian Watts. I am the voice of the U.S. Tank Commander in War Thunder. Ready up, attack the D point, all that fun stuff. It's funny because I don't actually say the attack the D point thing. I don't know where that came from. However, I guess the way I began was really years ago. Back in, I don't even know what year it was. I was the director for Team Infinite. We did Dragon Ball Z animation and a bunch of parodies. And those kind of animations kicked off. And my first kind of voiceover gig was actually a fan game called, Five Nights at Freddy's Overnight 2 Reboot, as well as Five Nights at Freddy's Final Nights 4. I voiced every animatronic character in Overnight 2 Reboot, sorry. And pretty much I voiced Investigator Max Donovan in Final Nights 4. From there, I went to voicing in Project Nightmares as Scott Williams, I believe. And from there on, kind of kicked off. I've really had a real big interest in voice acting, probably since I was in middle school, theater arts all through as well. But I was also in football as well, kind of branching off, if that makes any sense. But, when I was a kid, I used to play games like Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor, to me, was one of the quintessential FPS games out there, like military shooter games out there. The movie Saving Private Ryan actually inspired, I think it was Spielberg, who wanted to help create the Medal of Honor series, and then EA took the mantle. But I played like Medal of Honor not Airborne, Medal of Honor Underground, where you play as I believe it's a French spy during the Nazis' invasion of France. I also play games like Dino Crisis, which is kind of funny because a lot of games I voice in outside of games like War Thunder, Ready or Not, and all that stuff are also horror games. And it's funny because, when I was growing up, I was terrified of games like Dino Crisis and Resident Evil. In fact, when I loaded up Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1, as soon as I heard the main menu music, I ran. I didn't even, nope, not pressing start, not doing it. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, it's all good. The one that kind of stood out in your, I suppose your class's discography was the Mortuary Assistant, because I played that last year, and I'm guessing did you just like scream as one of the patients? Was that part of it?
Yeah, so I basically was tasked with being the patient. I previously worked with Brian Clark, the director of Darkstone Digital, who made the Mortuary Assistant, on games like Kohate. In Kohate, I played the role of Nathan something. I forgot his name. He was a protagonist, basically. I had a couple of lines in the actual game in the intro, but it's funny because, like, he asked me if I could, make myself sound like I'm choking or a muffled voice. So I was like, okay. So I sent him, a voice clip. And he's like, that sounds good, but can you make it more realistic? I was like, sure, Brian, I've got you. So I sent him a video of me with a belt around my mouth. I was like, is this realistic enough for you?
God damn.
Yeah, I love working with Brian. He's an awesome guy. But in regards to the Mortuary Assistant, I pretty much just screams. He directed me for about an hour, and I did the patient first, and then about a year later, when the extra update came out, I had voiced the priest. That one was interesting. A lot of inspiration from movies like The Conjuring and Insidious came from that. Went into the creation of the priest character. We did an actual biblical reading and all that's not an actual biblical reading, but we basically did what an actual priest would do to exorcise a demon or exorcise a spirit in reality. And it was great because working with Charlie was it was Charlie. I think it was Charlie. I'm not sure who the person was that was doing. I think it was Charlie though. I think it was. Doing the demon voice was great.
Yeah.
And it was really great collaboration on all parts. I really can't wait to work with him on future projects if we do. So that was probably one of my best horror projects out there was the Mortuary Assistant as well as Cohate. Cohate, I was live directed by Brian, did an incredible job. Probably some of my best voice work I've ever done in a horror game, actually. And that says a lot, really.
Yeah, because you've done a lot. Like that, it's actually insane the amount of voice work that you've done. But also, like after talking to a lot of voice actors, this is something that seems to be like kind of standard. Like you guys get spread around across all the place, which is cool. That to me is really nice that you're able to actually produce so many different voices for so many different things, or even just sounds, as you said, like the choking stuff. The question I have when it comes to all this is you talked about from your middle school and your high school that you were interested in this stuff through the games that you played. How did you transition that, I suppose, interest into actually making it a profession?
So I guess my first thing would be I was a writer for it was a failed project on Kickstarter. It wasn't my fault by any means. I was actually kind of the cleanup person because the publisher asked me to clean up, basically explain what actually happened. So what actually happened was, I can't give the guy's name out, but a game called Dinosaur Battlegrounds. I was the writer for the ebook, which was basically you're playing a game. You look on not Wikipedia, but it's like Zoopedia basically on the actual game itself, and then you look up the information of the dinosaurs or whatever. My job was to basically write the information for the actual dinosaurs. So Tyrannosaurus Rex, Stegosaurus, Ankylosaurus, tongue tied over here. Spinosaurus, things like that.
Yeah, Dino Encyclopedia, basically, right?
Exactly. There you go. The Dino Encyclopedia, or the Dinopedia, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So all was great, and the Kickstarter had made around $13,000 or whatnot. Unfortunately, the leader of the Kickstarter, or the creator of the Kickstarter, had taken the money and basically fled. So I was left with the publisher, who I basically had to write what actually happened, and that was my first experience in the gaming industry, which was not the best. How I got into voice acting, though, it was really a strange coincidence because I was a really big fan of Dragon Ball Z. I'm not sure if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z or not.
I've watched a few, not a ton, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was the director for Team Infinite, and our kind of our sort of goal was to make fan animated content inspired by Team 4 Stars, the Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. And we had done that a little bit with Just Saying episode. The Just Saying series was pretty popular. The first episode was completely hand drawn, really beautiful artwork, but some of my bad voice acting, I'll say that much. Second episode was pretty good, and then third episode kind of skyrocketed us. That was until we had inner strife that happened, so that's why we kind of shut down But that kind of brought me into the world of voiceover was because I was doing things like Perfect Cell. I was doing, that kind of voice and the kind of parody voice along with it. Basically, Perfect Cell was a complete sarcastic jerk the entire series. Great, because I could bring a sort of character to this already existing character out there. Um, but I transitioned from doing that to doing my first fan game. Now, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I'm pretty sure my very first fan game was actually Overnight 2 Reboot. If you're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's or know about Five Nights at Freddy's, simply like I voiced every animatronic in that series. Not the official series, to make that very clear. The Overnight 2 Reboot fan game. Well, hi there! I did that for about a couple months or whatnot, and picked up a lot of popularity. I mean, people played it everywhere. I mean, PewDiePie played it, Markiplier played it, a bunch of YouTubers who I've never heard of played it. um, but yeah, it was that kind of led me into actually getting involved in, I guess professional voiceover work, professional voice acting. I started working with games like Project Nightmares, where I played Scott Williams. That was a really great game, a really great horror game. Really great visually, really good storytelling, and terrifying. I will not play it, but I will watch people play it because I will not. I'm me chicken, me scared. um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it began. Theater arts kind of taught me improv, which is one of the biggest things I could really tell anybody who wants to be an actor out there is to learn improv because, oftentimes you'll get a script from, especially foreign developers or foreign directors, from people who may not necessarily speak English as a primary language or may have very little knowledge of the English language. So a lot of their scripts or a lot of their writing is kind of broken up or doesn't make any sense. With improv, you're able to essentially replace and replenish that script to make it sound, I guess, better or like make sense in the English world or the English, I guess, the English fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Um,
translate it basically so it makes more sense in
exactly. Yeah.
English. Yeah.
Exactly. And basically, that's the biggest thing I want to say out there is if you want to learn anything from theater arts, improv is one of the most important things you can learn, probably.
And
It's also
so
fun in general.
when it comes to like the training part then, so you just went into it, you didn't like, or did you like do any classes or did you do anything like that or did you just end up, kind of doing what you do now?
So my story is a little bit different. I'm more of a history of trial and error, if that makes any sense. Eventually, I did get actual classes. Sandra Lee Morris, people who Mark Grau. Not well, I don't know if it was Mark Grau. I forget who all taught me basically, who all basically trained me in terms of voiceover. It's on my website.
Yeah.
I know Cassandra Lee Morris did. I know that I've worked with Lonnie Manella on quite a few projects. Basically. And when I say trial and error, I basically mean when I first began, I was terrible. Like I was terrible. That's why I always say, get training first because otherwise you're kind of biting yourself in the, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. I'm not saying it to hurt anybody's feeling. I'm saying it speaking from experience. If you're not trained to do this, then it may not pan well for you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to put
like,
in the effort, right? Like the
yeah,
experience.
I mean, it's kind of like the best advice I was ever told was by, I think it may have been Robin Armstrong. He had told me that you would not hire a plumber with no plumbing experience to come fix your sink. So why would you hire a voice actor who has no experience in voiceover? Same thing with, sorry, he had stated just because you have a stethoscope does not make you a doctor. So having a microphone does not make you a voice actor. It's the same philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be able to learn how to like, well, I suppose, is it called inflection? Like when it comes to your voice and how you have to like put it out there. Like I've seen a lot of people do voice acting where they just talk and that is what they think voice acting is, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a bit of inflection, but also kind of putting yourself in the character's footsteps. I mean, for a lot of these horror games I've voiced in, it's a lot more horror game than anything else. Because yes, you can do that for military shooters. It's different, I guess you could say. I actually do teach classes now on this kind of stuff. Kind of crazy how I was being. I mean, and this is the biggest thing is that legendary actors in the industry like Troy Baker and Nolan North, they are still taking classes this very day. even with all their stuff, they've actually been coached or they've actually voiced, The Last of Us, things like that. They are still taking classes because there's never enough you can learn in life, and that's the biggest thing. But it's about putting yourself in the character's footsteps. If you're playing the role of a protagonist or an antagonist in a horror game, then you want to understand what that character is going through. You want to understand what that character's motives are. You want to understand how they sound, everything basically. And then you want to relay that sort of mentality to your expression for that character in the actual project itself.
Yeah, and one of the ones we talked about was Mortuary Assistant, and you said that you ended up watching like The Conjuring and obviously seeing the priest in that. I remember that scene where he's trying to exorcise the demons. Always fun. But
Oh yeah.
is that something that you do for most roles then? So if you need to get into the head of, let's say, I don't know, so recently you voice acted in the Gates of Hell Liberation DLC for the American side. So for you, how do you get yourself into that character? What I suppose history do you like call upon, or do you watch specific movies, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, so in regards to The Conjuring and Insidious, I was already a fan of those movies prior to that. So I just kind of took what I remembered actually watching. But of course, I watched the movies because they're fun to watch as well. Not at nighttime when you're home alone, completely, and you know, if you're scared of the dark, don't do it. I'm just kidding. But in regards to, I believe you're talking about Airborne, the DLC coming out for Gates of Hell Liberation, or sorry, Gates of Hell soon. I watched Band of Brothers actually. That's a really great series on Netflix out there if you're a fan of World War II. I guess really just great series in general. Band of Brothers is one of the top classic series out there. I mean, it tells the story of the 101st Airborne, Easy Company. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, Band of Brothers is really good. The Pacific is fantastic, and even last year with the Mighty Eighth Air Force one, I can't remember what it was called. That one was really good too, from Spielberg and Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We watched it last year, and it just hasn't stuck in my mind as much as the other two. But I need to rewatch it. I do enjoy.
Funny story is when I voiced the tank commander in War Thunder, I actually started watching the movie for Fury.
Yeah, with Brad Pitt. That's
exactly,
a good one.
Yeah.
But so we've talked about a little bit about your history and how getting into it and getting involved in different projects. How did you get involved when it came to Gaijin projects then? So you voice acted in War Thunder, you've done some enlisted stuff too. So obviously, they enjoy your work. How did that happen? Like, did they just shoot you an email, or how was it all set up for you?
So I reached out to a contact at Gaijin. Basically, I communicated with Gaijin directly. And after working on a couple of trailers, a couple of teasers, and things of that nature for War Thunder, Enlisted, Crossout, and the other project I believe they're working on, I call it. It's to do with the ocean.
Age of Water?
Yeah, I did a voice in that game as well. I'm not sure what it was. It was so long ago. But I've done trailers and teasers for Crossout, Enlisted, and War Thunder. And eventually what led to was there was an opening for opportunity to voice, the tank driver, the tank gunner, the tank commander, and something else. And I was like, the tank commander sounds fun, so let me try that. So I was like, I sent them my recordings. They sent me the check basically, and that was pretty much it. But what ended up happening was they used a studio somewhere else that I'm not going to disclose who that studio is, obviously. But I ended up having to redo the recording because the person that I had contact with wanted me to be the tank commander, which I really appreciate that and can't thank him enough for that. But I redid my recordings about a couple of hours later, and one hoarse voice later, which basically means I was out of breath. Lines were done, submitted. About 3 or 4 months later, the voice was implemented in the game.
It's crazy, isn't it? The turnaround time sometimes
Oh, yeah.
of those things. Yeah, the thing that gets me sometimes is there's this idea that a lot of stuff is like planned way ahead of the time, and some things are, but other things like this are a little bit more, okay, it's ready to go, let's go. Like, let's just chuck it in and see what happens.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna ask about how. So you said you record at home, right? Because I feel like when we see like videos of like voice actors, especially in games, they're usually in these like huge studios, and they're part of like media content, so it kind of shows how they do it. For you, you just have like a place in your home where you do it.
Yeah, so I have a home studio. It's a fully integrated sound isolation studio, about 4 to 6 in dimension. I'm not certain. I haven't measured it in a while. But it's basically 3-layered walled, plywood. It's got sound insulation boarding, egg crate foam. It's pretty much like a $5,000 to $6,000 plus studio, home built and everything. But yeah, all my recordings are done through that basically. Every project I've actually done, besides my old studio, which is pretty much just a curtain, has been recorded at this studio here. And of course, I live on the East Coast, so there's not really many opportunities when it comes to doing in-studio work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's more like LA and stuff like that.
If you're looking for anime, it's LA and Texas. I do wish they would go back to the way it used to be during I'm not saying I want COVID at all. I'm not saying that at all. Thank God COVID is over. But what I am saying is I kind of wish they would, go back to supporting remote talent like they used to. It just kind of seems like they left us in the dust, if that makes any sense.
It's very odd to me because it would make the most sense because it would save them costs, and at the same time it would actually mean the person who you are employing to do this, it's obvious that they care about it, right? Because they're setting it up all themselves. Like if you actually want to see the full kind of studio booth that he basically records everything around, you can find it in the gameography section on Brian's website, and it goes through all of the different, I suppose, technology used and devices, and it is definitely an investment, right? Like it's not cheap to start with. Is this so? When it came to obviously the microphone, you have the Neumann, you have the Bear Dynamic headphones, which I thought you would have like higher end ones, but I suppose those are like a really good option too, right? Like they're mainly designed for sound quality, where for me, like I've always gone like Sennheisers and stuff like that. But the weird thing to me is when I set up my setup, I did it like piecemeal. So I like got the computer and then keyboard and mouse, and then every year I just like add something to it, and it's just become this like awful Frankenstein mess of like random stuff. So like for you, did you just go, okay, I'm gonna make the investment, I'm gonna get involved in this, or was it like a gradual process?
It was more of a gradual process. So it's kind of funny because the only reason I have the Focusrite 8i6 was because one of my agents basically told me that they said the email out saying if you have the Focusrite blah 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 or the something Reaper or not Reaper, I forget what it's called. The Apollo, I think is what it's called, the Apollo something. Either get the Apollo or the Focusrite. I coughed up $600 and I got the Focusrite, and I'm just like, why not? But yeah, my first thing that I bought was probably the actual studio microphone itself. I couldn't have had it in my old studio because it was just not proper for that. I had the Rode NT1A in my old studio. This one is actually the Neumann TLM 103, which is running about a couple $1,000. Well, about $1,200 probably.
It's an incredibly good microphone. Let's just put it like that. It's and the other parts of it, obviously the audio interface with the Scarlett, as you said, and then all the other parts. It's one of those things where I don't want to like think about how much I've spent on all of these things because of the cost mount up. But the main thing is you obviously make money from it, right? Like you're a contract worker. It works well. You've been able to be on so many projects. It's insane to think about. So it's kind of an investment into you. So in that light, when it comes to this type of work and when it comes to everything, how sustainable is it for you? Like, obviously, we don't need to go into numbers or anything like that, but is this something that you can, like, comfortably do full time, do you feel like? Or is it something that is more of kind of like a side gig thing for you?
I would definitely say a side gig. There's sorry, I keep saying a lot, by the way.
No, it's okay.
I just realized that. I'm like, oh gosh, go back and edit it and cut all those ums out. I feel like I'm meditating at this point. I would essentially say it's a side gig. You don't make nearly as much as people think you do. I mean, I had somebody who actually asked me, "Does Gaijin pay you royalties?" I'm like, "No." It's like, no.
Yeah, that's
No, no, no,
never
no, no.
happening. Never happening.
No. I don't know any game out there that would pay royalties. And I don't even think Troy Baker or Nolan North get royalties. I don't think they do.
No, I would doubt it too.
I mean, royalties are more or less for like movies and really just books. More so movies than anything else. And you're talking like Hollywood movies, like A-star celebrities, essentially, or B-star celebrities, maybe. But I would say if you're looking into voiceover, do not count this as your main career because it is incredibly difficult to make this a primary career, especially with the way the economy is right now. I mean, buying a house on a voiceover salary, it's not easy at all. I'm just speaking from experience. I'm not trying to crush anybody's dreams out there. I'm just simply speaking honestly. I've worked multiple jobs in the past for my primary job while putting voiceover as a freelance job as a secondary position. So, giving the best advice out there, I would always say if you want to do this and you are passionate about it, that's great. But don't look to this as your main source of income because if you have that expectation, you're just going to be disappointed in the end.
Yeah, it's very similar to like a lot of online content creation, right? Like, so for me, like YouTube and Twitch, even though I put a lot of time into it, it also doesn't sustain my life like with my family. So I have like my job on top of it. But I think it's super healthy to actually see it as like, you know, kind of a side thing. But the way that I've tried to justify the stuff that I do in my head is you do have a lasting impact on people. People do enjoy what you do. And also it is nice to have kind of like a pseudo hobby where you get paid a bit, right? That's basically what it is. And then if it transitions into a full-time job, that's awesome. Like that's how I kind of feel about the whole thing. So let's talk about the military side of it. So we talked about like the horror side. You've done a ton of horror stuff. The other like huge, I suppose, genre is military. So you've been involved in the Syrian warfare game, which is super surprising to be honest. Call to Arms, Gates of Hell, War Thunder, Enlisted, stuff like what are some of the other ones? Ready or Not, even. Yeah, you were in Ready or Not. That's crazy. Safeguard is also another one. And Chernobylite, that's kind of surprising too. Fog of War as well. Goddamn.
Chernobylite, I actually voiced the original voice of Mikhail, or Mikhail. I think his name was Mikhail.
Yeah.
I can't say that I voiced in the current version, but I still am able to say that I did voice originally in the old version, if that makes any sense. So I want to just clarify that I don't officially voice in Chernobylite. I used to, if that makes sense. It was a prototype.
Yeah. No, that's fair. But so when it comes to this, you've talked about like you watching like stuff when you were younger for military stuff. Is there any other connection, like family stuff or, you know, work stuff or anything like that? Or is it just because you're passionate about that part?
Well, I wrote a World War III novel back in high school called The Day of Awakening. It was a World War III novel that I essentially wrote when I was a sophomore in high school and I had publishing opportunities. I never really did anything with it. I've been trying to. I mean, high school was a long time ago for me. It's kind of telling my age at this point. But when my aunt passed away, I kind of wanted to go back and, you know, get it published. And the reason why was because she was struck by a delivery driver in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and law enforcement did not properly do their jobs. Well, either that or the courts didn't. and instead of getting any kind of justice, my my uncle got pardon me for saying this, but blood money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to get that published in her memory, if that makes any sense. But outside of the somber stuff we're talking about right now, sorry about getting kind of off topic a little
Oh,
bit.
it's okay. It's fine.
I was greatly inspired by movies like what's that? It's a Navy SEAL movie where I forgot. Act of Valor. That's it. Act of
Oh,
Valor.
yeah. Yep.
Act of Valor. There were so many great movies out there. As soon as I say that, my mind draws a blank. Just there's so many great modern military movies out there. World War II movies like Saving Private Ryan, for example. So many other movies out there as well. That kind of inspired me to want to do military stuff, as well as my grandfather served in the U.S. Navy on the USS John F. Kennedy. And that's kind of why I also wanted to get involved in voiceover, was because I kind of wanted to relay the sort of feeling I had when I was a kid, watching and playing these games, hearing the voices to a modern audience. That's kind of why I wanted to do that. Ironically, it's funny because most of what I voice in is not meant for kids. But I will say that, getting to do military shooters, FPS, RTS games like Gates of Hell Liberation is a true honor for me, because I get to share sort of my appreciation for, the men and women of our country who have served, fought, and sometimes have died defending this great nation. Well, you're in Canada, so freedom in general.
I do class America as a very good nation, so don't worry about
Well,
it.
we fought together as allies in World War II, so yeah, I'll say
exactly.
that. But like I said, getting to actually voice these characters was a really great opportunity, and I really do appreciate every project she worked on, and I can't wait to work on more. For Ready or Not, I was a jail officer for years. I was a correctional officer for Virginia for years, and getting to be able to voice in a police tactical shooter game is a really great thing, even if it's me shooting the police. It's kind of funny because, whenever I have law enforcement that comes to Comic-Cons, I always try to give them a free, autograph of the accomplice or whatever from Ready or Not, which is, a lot of them don't know what that is, but I tell them just check it out if you're a fan of, like, police SWAT shooters, like SWAT 4, for example.
Yeah.
And trying to make some, connections with local law enforcement with the game itself, because that's really, I think it would be great if they had more law enforcement kind of attention to that, if that makes any sense. But, games like that, games like, what was the other one? Enlisted was great because I got to voice paratroopers. Games like Ground Branch was really great because I got to voice the US PMCs. Operator, which I got to voice, ironically enough, a operator with the name Brian, which is hilarious. Gates of Hell Liberation, of course, I mentioned earlier on that I got to voice, the U.S. military, the U.S. sniper. What's really cool about this is that the U.S. sniper, I actually made that line up. Like, the prayer was based entirely on the sniper's prayer from Saving Private Ryan. The team loved it so much they kept it in the actual game, which is phenomenal. I love that. Because you don't really see many games, especially military games nowadays, that have any kind of biblical references at all. In Christianity, I am a Christian, so it does ring something to me, if that makes sense. But again, I keep saying
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Other games I've voiced in that are military are games like Broken Arrow. For Broken Arrow, ironically, I've voiced all the characters for the actual gameplay or the teaser trailer, and then eventually I worked with Lana Manello, who we worked together, and I forgot what she voiced, but I voiced the U.S. Navy or the U.S. ship. I was a Tomahawk cruise missile carrier, I was a cruise missile ship that fired Tomahawks at the enemy, and Tomahawks are basically semi-nukes. But yeah, that's kind of going into like the military shooters a little bit.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are looking forward to Broken Arrow. I don't think it's out yet, right? Like, they delayed it to 2025. But
Yeah.
hopefully soon that will come out. But yeah, the other part I kind of wanted to talk about too is, so we talked about your past projects and your kind of history with it all. But what about like future stuff? What would you like to get involved in? Like obviously you have your like content side of things, like your streaming stuff, your YouTube stuff, and things like that. But what would you like to break into? What expansion area do you think you'd like to give a go at?
Uh, in terms of like getting opportunities in voiceover, or
Yeah, like what if there were projects that you wanted to get involved in which weren't like military or horror or even some animated stuff that you've done in the past, like is there anything that's on kind of like your bucket list to voice? Or is it like, do you want to get involved in like movies or like TV shows or like anime or whatever it is? Like where do you see yourself going with things?
I'll give you one single hint. Kenobi. So yes, Star Wars would be a huge opportunity. Like that would just blow me away if I got a chance to voice in the Star Wars project at all. You could, you know what? I would be a droid in Star Wars. I would just be beep boop, beep. I would do that if I had a chance to. I grew up on Star Wars, and honest to God, it is one of the things that I think every child should growing up, because the story itself, it tells a really great story aside the whole brother sister incest part. But it does tell a great story. And it's just phenomenal growing up. And I remember when I was a kid, episode 3 came out, and I was in line for hours. I got out of school early. My parents got me out of school early, and I was in line for hours with a lightsaber just dueling this random kid. And the theater was fully packed. It was completely insane. But I remember that like as vivid as day. And it's kind of like nowadays, there's less of that sort of, I guess, momentum for Star Wars because of a lot of what Disney has done. Because, I don't want to get involved in that kind of stuff, but I will say that
I'll say it's pretty oversaturated. How about that? There's quite a lot of it going around. Yeah, let's just put it like that.
I love the cameos. I really do. I just kind of wish they would do something unique, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to see them kind of like go their own path. Try and create something new in the universe. It would be lovely, actually.
What about like the whole Old Republic? I mean, the Old Republic with Darth Revan, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, the thing that I've always wanted for Star Wars is just an RTS again, like Empire at War.
Oh yes,
there was news that there was the Total War guys were working on a Star Wars, which would just be nuts if that's the case. But
I'm not going to confirm nor deny that. I have a couple of CA developers, so I'm not going to confirm nor deny that.
Yeah, the wonderful lines we walk when it comes to these things.
Love it. Call it NDAs.
Yeah, I'm guessing. So when it comes to NDAs, I'm guessing you're like NDA'd up the wazoo, right? Like with certain projects.
Quite a few NDAs I've signed for. I can't reveal what they are. I'll talk to you privately and tell you what the name is without telling you what the actual project is. But there's quite a few NDAs that I've already lined up for. A couple of them are huge horror.
Yeah, just so on that part of it. So when it comes to representation, because that's one of the things we didn't really talk about. You obviously have your own studio that you built. You said that you actually go out to these companies and kind of say, hey, I'm available if you need anything. Is that the majority of it, or do studios contact you, or is it relationships that you've cultivated in the past, or how would somebody go about trying to get involved in these things? Is it literally just kind of like shooting your shot with people, or maybe like getting involved in like smaller projects first, or what would you recommend?
Well, it's kind of like, it's sort of like the networking of building friendships along the way, and your connections are kind of. I started a little bit there. It's building connections along the way. So if you work with some project and the project really liked your work, they may recommend you to another project that's also looking for a voice actor. And you also have to go out there and network as in your own way, reaching out to people your own sort of way. There have been instances where I've been approached by developers who didn't even know me because they heard good things about me. That doesn't often happen, but it can. My biggest thing is that you want to build a portfolio before you go out there and send random messages to developers and directors, things like that, because you only get one good shot at it with a good first impression. And once you ruin that good shot, that's it.
Yeah, a demo reel is very important, I think, is probably the way to put it. And yeah, knowing people is nice, but also not initially needed. I think the work definitely would speak for a person, right? And then it's like that secondary area that you talked about, where once you were starting to get into it, then that's the time where you need to start like chatting to people and going through. Then you need to get like the mechanics down for stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's very similar to at least how I approach a lot of these things. You know, get the core sorted, and then you can expand from it. So the other part that I think is also kind of interesting, at least for me, is you talked about how you have ad-libbed like a decent chunk of lines, or let's say like translate them to English for like people who aren't English. So you add your own stuff in. How does like the creative process work? Do you get jobs where it's like, okay, literally just read this line for line, or is it more like open to like your interpretation? Do you have a bit of creative control?
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It depends on if the project director, the audio director, whoever's in charge, the script writer, the narrator, the narrative director, if they're willing to work with you. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. You have to be very, I guess, nimble, I guess you could say, or flexible when it comes to what the team wants. Obviously, you don't want to do something that's going to completely just destroy the script. But at the same time, you know, if the script needs to be worked on or needs better editing, a lot of times they will work with you. That's not saying every single time, but they're saying like most of the time they will be willing to work with you. However, it's more or less you have to understand what their needs are and if they're willing to be flexible when it comes to, I guess, changing the script entirely or changing the script little by little.
And the other part is, so is this done like live while because you obviously do it like in your home, right? So are you live with them doing it, or do you like record it and then send it and then they give you feedback and then you do it again?
Sometimes it's live, sometimes it's not. Personally, I prefer live direction because that means there's a less likely chance that there's going to be any kind of mistakes in terms of like the tonality of the actual character, how they express themselves, whether they need to scream or whatnot, or how they pronounce a word. For example, in Gates of Hell Airborne, I had to pronounce somebody's name, and I kept getting the name incorrectly. Or sorry, I kept getting the name incorrect, so I actually messaged the audio person, and I was like, "How do you say this name? Can you send me an audio clip of how to say this name?" So they did, and that's pretty much what I mean. Is that I prefer live direction because there's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get things that can be a nuisance fixed, whether over just recording on your own, where you send in recording and 80% might be great, but then there's 20% that sounds either terrible or off completely.
So like repetition is very important, like keeping everything to the same standard, basically.
Exactly, yes.
And how long, so I don't know, how long would you say like your average recording session is for stuff like this? Like how many, I know this is kind of a ridiculous question because it kind of depends on the project, but like, would you like do it for like an hour, 2 hours at a time, or like how long do you need breaks between things? Because I know like with my voice, if I'm taking like breaks, I can usually do it for like hours, but if I'm constantly like going through lines over and over again, I'm basically about 40 or 50 minutes is like my limit until my voice box decides that it needs to die.
So I'm very quick with my deliveries. I can get things done very quickly and professionally. However, it depends on how big the script is. I can't necessarily say that I'll be done in like an hour if the script is like 15 pages long.
Yeah, of course.
Something like that. As soon as I get the script, I get in my studio, put my headphones on, and I put myself in that character's footsteps. I like to do a lot of what is known as method acting in terms of like mostly FPS and horror games where you put yourself in the character's footsteps and you kind of relay how the character feels using hand motions and physical motions. Sort of like the best person that has done this would be Mark Hamill's The Joker. When he did The Joker, he's always in his kind of method acting sort of stance where he's kind of twisting his face and all that stuff. And you can obviously hear my vocals change a little bit. That's because I'm, using physical acting. So when you physically act, your actual body can change how your voice. It's crazy to sound, or it's crazy that I know it sounds crazy basically, but it actually is true.
Yeah, the physical side is super important. Not obviously just the voice cords, but yeah, the body. Like you do need to act it out, right? Like I find when I'm recording videos a lot of the time, for some reason I'm doing a bunch of hand movements, like as if I'm like pointing at a board or moving things around. It just helps with the flow of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is pretty fun. So we talked about the professional part. The other part that has to be talked about is, what games do you play? Like, what do you actually enjoy, sitting down and chilling with? Is it the games that like you usually go into, like horror stuff and military stuff, or is there like other things that you enjoy in that space?
So I kind of enjoy games such as like Call to Arms, Gates of Hell, of course, just because I like RTS games in World War II. I've actually been playing a lot more a lot more Gates of Hell. I keep saying Call to Arms. It is Call to Arms, Gates of Hell, but you only need Gates of Hell. You don't have to buy Call to Arms to actually play it. I've been enjoying that game. I've been enjoying games like Kenshi. If you know what Kenshi is, it's a really great RPG. Probably one of the really most interesting RPGs out there. I've been playing games like Bannerlord, which is Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Games such as Star Wars Jedi Academy. I'm just looking at my Steam list at this point. Ironically, in July, I was playing Star Wars Empire at War. But I've also been playing, Ready or Not, Grand Theft Auto 5, Hogwarts Legacy, things of that nature, really. And I mentioned earlier on about my grandfather, being in the U.S. Navy. This is kind of a little bit of a personal thing for me, but I also wanted to sort of, because nobody lives forever, unfortunately. I mean, there's going to be a one day where they're not going to be around, if that makes any sense. And I wanted to immortalize or memorialize him in projects that other people can play. So he actually has a voice in Call to Arms, Gates of Hell Liberation, believe it or not. He is actually one of the tank drivers or tank commanders in the actual missions. But he's also been in games like, what is this game called? Grand Tactician Civil War. And I played the role of a Confederate soldier, I forgot what it was. But he played the role of a general in the actual game. And he's a huge fan. I don't want to say fan because that sounds really bad. He's a huge... Cut.
Interesting part of history, that one. Yeah.
He likes to explore the historical side of things.
There we go. Much better.
War. I have to relay the way I said that. But yeah, I kind of wanted to pay homage to him, because he's kind of the one that when I was growing up, we would play games like Medal of Honor together. He would be in the room with me, and then my grandmother would come in there with milk and cookies, and we'd be eating, chocolate chip cookies while shooting Nazis. Such a great combination. But I also play games like Spyro and things like that. But what I was getting at is that I enjoy the idea of working to get that sort of bondage, if that makes any sense. Not bondage, bonding.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, just because it means a lot more to me, just because I can actually do something for other people, especially somebody who I care about deeply.
Yeah, it's for me. I enjoy playing obviously a lot of military games. I've enjoyed kind of like I suppose you'd class it as the Men of War-esque games for ages. Even when I was way younger, playing stuff like Soldiers, Heroes of World War II, Faces of War, things like that. I think I've played pretty much every single one in that series, and also Men of War and Blitzkrieg and things like that. But also, I enjoy stuff like Majesty, which it's a fantasy kingdom sim from like the early 2000s, or even sometimes I like booting up The Sims because I used to play it with my sisters when I was younger. And it's just one of those things.
War Thunder.
And of course, War Thunder, yeah. War Thunder's definitely in there somewhere. But yeah, War Thunder's a different kettle of fish. That one was kind of, at least for me, it was like a perfect storm time when I started playing War Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to play World of Tanks, and at the time, this was like 10, 11, 12 years ago, I had like this old Toshiba laptop, and it just didn't work very well with World of Tanks. And also it was when like there was a lot of like the gold ammunition issues and stuff like that. And War Thunder just came out, and instead of being on like 10 FPS, I was now on like 20 FPS. So I decided to play War Thunder, and it was a lot better. And now here we are. How times change.
I haven't tried World of Tanks yet. I have a buddy of mine that actually voiced in World of Tanks. He voiced in World of Tanks. Oh, so World of Tanks, not War of Tanks. It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, yeah. World of Tanks. I struggle with it too. But now the game itself is obviously quite arcadey and different, but it's also, for me, it honestly was like it wasn't like really an enjoyment thing too much. It was more, I have such a bad laptop, it only runs this at a decent amount. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, nowadays I look at like my two PCs that I have, and it's such a different world. Like, it's insane. So
Dude,
much
when I was
nicer.
growing up, I was so scared of not being able to play Medieval 2 Total War. And you're talking about a game that on my computer nowadays, my computer would probably laugh at.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, growing up, I had like a laptop, and I'm talking like one of those old, like not even a gaming laptop, but just a laptop that maybe could play a couple Flash games, and that's probably it. Maybe The Sims if you're like lagging a lot. But I remember being terrified of trying to play Medieval 2 Total War, because that was back when the trailer came out in 2006.
Yeah.
And I was really excited for it. And then I'm playing it nowadays. I'm like, what the hell was I excited for?
It's so weird, isn't it? Like, so for me, I really enjoyed Medieval 2 Total War, but it was because of I used the Third Age mod, which was the Lord of the Rings mod for it.
Oh yeah.
And I even go back to that today just to like look at it and be like, wow, this was kind of revolutionary at the time. But it was also like, how many years ago? Like 18 years ago now. And now there's like a new mod that they're working on. Well, yeah, it's nuts, right? Like, I still remember gaming on DOS, like Lord. Yeah, exactly. So I'm definitely I'm dinosaur level now. But yeah, it's so weird thinking about how different technology is now. Like the fact that you're able to do like the job that you do and not have to go to like a professional studio, and you can just like do it in your home with all your own stuff. Like, that must be kind of cool, right? Like, it's pretty liberating as well. Like you are, I suppose, like the thingy of your destiny. I can't remember what the word is. You're the commander of your destiny or whatever.
The author of your destiny.
Yeah, that one. That's pretty awesome.
It definitely is. Sometimes I do wish there were more opportunities out there for remote talent, because it doesn't feel like there are. But I could be speculating. I'm not 100% certain. But I definitely do. Like I said, I appreciate all my work that I've done, or all the work that has been handed to me, and all the opportunities that have been handed to me, because I really do appreciate that. It sometimes is difficult. People think that voice acting is so easy, but it's really not. A lot of times your work itself is to find work. As a freelancer, your job is to find work. And it's easier said than done. It really is. But, like I mentioned, getting involved like physical activities in terms of like voice acting, you will sweat a lot doing voice work. You really will. People don't think you will, but you really will. You may also lose your voice depending on, the actual voice work and the strain you put on your actual vocal cords. And that's a big thing, is that you got to learn how to control your voice. You got to learn how to control your breathing and everything else. It's a blessing, but it can also be a curse sometimes, because sometimes you may end up looking for work the whole day and not find anything. Sometimes you might strike lucky like a gold miner and find actual gold, which basically means like a job or a gig. Sometimes you might not. It really depends on your perseverance level, and are you willing to put yourself through that kind of sacrifice?
Yeah, it's very similar to like contractor versus salaried, right? Like when it comes to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
hmm
the internet is one of those areas which gives you a lot of opportunity, but also at the same time it can decide to shoot you in the face. It's one of those that's a bit all over the place. Standardized work would be a lot nicer, but for me, at least nowadays, since I have like my actual job, doing this is kind of like a free thing. I feel like is really nice. But I do agree, if I had to, let's say, like, I don't know, I lost my job or whatever, and then I had to do like the content stuff, I think the dynamic between like how I approach it and also how everything works would just be completely different. And I don't think it would be as fun. I'd be a lot more stressed, right, in terms of like trying to find work and doing all of these things and trying to keep up with like everything that's going on. It would
hmm
definitely be a lot tougher to do. You talked about
Oh,
like
exactly.
what's it called? If obviously if your voice is not feeling it, or if you're ill, like let's say you got a cold or something, do
hmm
you do you do any like exercises or like warm-ups for your voice?
So
Um
if your voice basically gets hoarse, I like to do the old-fashioned country way of doing things, where you basically take honey and whiskey and drink it, but
oh
also get drunk.
Jesus. A slight side effect.
Yeah, you get by my grandpa for that one.
Oh, that's great. But you
It does
don't
work, but it's funny because you also get drunk as a side effect.
but you don't do like any like vocal warm-ups, like or like nothing like that. You just go straight in.
Well, no, depending on the project. If it's something simple, like maybe one or two lines, I don't need to. But if
Yeah.
it's something like a long paragraph, like a page, 2 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages, whatever, then do re mi fa la si do. I actually teach this in my class as well, because if anybody actually wants to learn voiceover, I do offer private coaching and sometimes classes as well. Um, Again, I'm not saying that I know everything. I'm simply saying, or simply teaching what I know. And I mentioned earlier on that Troy Baker, Nolan North, all those professional, like triple triple A, I guess you want to say, actors are still taking classes to this very day, because there's never enough that you know in life, or that you can know in life.
And
But the do re mi,
also,
oh sorry,
sorry,
go ahead.
no, you go.
The do re mi fa la si do teaches you how to do voice tempo changes and voice, your vocal changes and all that stuff. It's very important when it comes to like exercising your vocal cords, and I can't stress it enough. Sorry, you go ahead now.
Well, I was just saying, if you want to see like all of the people who have trained you or coached you, you have it on the website. So yeah, the website is to me one of the most fascinating facts, because one of the problems I see with a lot of people who want to like either break into this or like do something with it, it reminds me of people who go, "Hey, how do I get views on YouTube?" And then I just stand there and go, "Well, have you, do you understand like what bitrate is? Do you, have how much of like the foundational part have you done? Like in terms of understanding like how the technology part works, because then we can actually start talking about, like the personality part and like all of that. And, the trying to, create content that you like. If you don't have that foundation there, it doesn't really
Mhm.
work. And luckily for you, and well, not luckily, you did it. Like you have the foundation of it, and it's really cool to see that you're kind of continuing that. And it's not really like giving it to the next generation, but it's like, passing on what you know to others. It's nice to know that it isn't just all like cutthroat all the time, which unfortunately in a lot of contract work, that's what you hear about, right? Like how everybody is
Mhm.
just trying to decapitate the next person.
The whole point of voiceover is to have fun. Like the whole
Yeah.
point of acting is to have fun. If it's not fun for you, then maybe you should look into another career or like another profession. Basically, you need to have fun. I know that, and there are projects out there that I've voiced in that I'm ashamed of because I didn't do my best performance, or maybe the director didn't really, adhere to the idea of me bringing an audio director in, or a narrative director, or somebody out there who can actually help to write the script, or maybe they refused to do live direction and it kind of failed in the end. A lot of times, a failure in terms of voiceover isn't because of the voice actor; it's because of the script. And I was actually told this by a person that actually coached me. Um, what that basically means is that if the script is bad, it doesn't matter how good the voice actor is. Look at Destiny, for example.
With Peter
For
Dinklage.
yeah, Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, that
That
was
script was
tough.
even hard for the person that replaced him, which, if I'm not mistaken, was either Troy Baker or Nolan North, one of the two. I think it was Nolan North. It was hard for Nolan North to even do the actual voice because the script was just so bleh. I
Yeah.
mean, it comes down to, is the script good? If the script's bad, there's the first problem. If the script's good, but the delivery was bad, then we need to work on proper delivery, whether it's live direction, whether it's, coaching through texting or whatever. That's perfectly fine. But if you're not having fun in this industry, maybe it's time to look at another profession, because that's the ultimate thing, is that even if you have a bad gig, which you're going to get bad gigs, no matter what profession or job you have out there, there's going to be a day that you have a bad day, and it's going to happen. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it will happen eventually. You can't get your head down and, say, well, what was me? Maybe I should quit. Everybody gets bad days. The thing that shows perseverance, obviously, is the word itself, is how you persevere from that. Or I guess, not glow up, but shows how you handle adversity is persevering from the bad day or the bad gig or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, going back to, if you're not having fun, maybe you should look at other routes. That's the whole thing.
Oh, I massively agree. Like in just creation in general, you have to be interested in it. Like you will have tough days, but at the same time, the passion has to be there. It's as simple as that. If you are making stuff that you have absolutely no interest in, it is very obvious. And to that Destiny example, that's the thing that really kind of made me sad about it, because it was obvious that the script was horrifically bad. But also at the same time, Peter Dinklage just phoned it in. Like, it incredibly monotone, didn't really do anything with it, and it was just like a culmination of just awful. And since that was like the main character that you had to deal with that whole game, that's all you heard all the time. Like, it just seemed a perfect storm of just bad.
Mm-hmm.
And when, just like any creative industry, like, it's very obvious when people are phoning it in. And
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you definitely do need to at least care about it, and that's something actually. So how long would you say you've been doing this for? It has to be a decent amount of years at this point.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I actually went back on my Twitch channel and looked, and I was like, I thought I played this like a year ago. Nope, it was 3 years ago. So I'm like, time is just escaping me at this point. So
yeah.
At this point, I want to say to 5 to 6 years at this point, because I'm not 100% certain off the top of my head. Either 5 to 6. God, hold on. Let me just check real fast. Let me just type in one game, and I know I'll tell you right now how long it was. Oh. Hold on. Let me type in my name fast. 7 years ago. Good Lord.
7 years. Yeah.
Officially, since Overnight 2 reboot, it would be 7 years ago. Professionally, probably 6 years.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, right?
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, you lose track of time though.
And the major thing for me is a lot of the, at least, projects that I know about have come out like the last few years that you've worked on. So it doesn't seem like things are slowing down for you. If anything, things are quickening up, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm always looking for more opportunities out there.
Of
and
course,
I'm
yeah.
also looking for collaboration. People actually want the U.S. Tank Commander. I don't know why they would want me to do collaboration opportunities with people who like War Thunder, but I'm always willing to do it. But I'm always looking for more opportunities out there, whether it's FPS, military, FPS, horror, anime, anything of that nature, RPG. I love RPG games, so like getting a chance to voice in a game similar to Skyrim would be a dream, as well as Star Wars, of course. Can't forget Star Wars. But yeah, I'm always kind of pushing myself to do better if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're not slacking, basically. Yeah, constant improvements and all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, and that's great. Well, to be honest, I think we've covered everything. Like, it's been fantastic chatting to you. So,
Absolutely, it's been fun.
we should definitely do some more stuff in the future if we can. I'll have some ideas.
Absolutely. Play some War Thunder.
Yeah, or even Gates of Hell, man. Like, I'm a huge fan of Gates of Hell. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I know it's very weird, but it's surreal in a way. Like, literally, just because you hear it. It's like when you see somebody's face out in public and they're in like a TV show, and then you kind of like recognize them. Like, I went to a rugby game on Sunday, and it was a bunch of like the women's rugby. So it was like England versus America, and it was really cool. And this lady literally sat down a few rows ahead of me, and she was the ex-England head coach, and I recognized her after like seeing her like a few years ago on TV, and I was just like, it's just so weird. And this is a similar moment where you hear something and then you go, oh, it's this person, and I'm talking to them. This is just odd, you know? But I think it's really cool. I thank a lot for like the opportunities that I get to like speak to people who are part of the industry or around the place, and I just want to thank you for sitting down and chatting. Like, it's been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecovo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.